Hello, people of Connecticut, my fellow people of common sense. This is Selena Rifkin, and I am here with Leslie Wolfgang. I'm going to have her introduce herself. She's from the Family Institute. And so she's going to tell us all about what she is doing, what the Institute has been doing, and we're just going to have a great conversation because we actually had this conversation before, and I lost the recording because my computer only wants to run so many apps at one time. So we have that problem fixed, and I am really excited to have Leslie back here with us, and I'm really appreciating it, and I hope she'll come back again because I've got lots of questions, and I don't think we're going to get to them all for this episode. So Leslie, why don't you tell us about the Family Institute and how you ended up there and what you guys are doing?
Sure, sure. Thanks for having me on, Selena. Yes, my name is Leslie Wolfgang, and I am the Director of Public Policy for the Family Institute of Connecticut. And I'm actually here today on behalf of Family Institute of Connecticut Action, which is more of our advocacy wing.
Okay.
And so we have Family Institute of Connecticut, which is our educational, it's a technical status within the law. It's a C3 organization. Then our C4 organization is Family Institute of Connecticut Action, and that's where we have our blog and where we do work on social media and when I go up to the legislature to lobby. And then we also have a PAC that we use when when the PAC committee is going to endorse candidates for office, and that's on a state level. So for FIC Action, we are um, we're not affiliated with any party or any particular religion, but we work on behalf of families up at the legislature. And that includes families from the Christian faith, from the Jewish faith, from anybody who wants to have a better Connecticut for their families. So we're always looking for things up at the legislature that might touch on those issues. We also work closely with churches
Mhm.
on religious freedom, one of our first and most important basic rights. So anything that tries to impinge on the religious liberty of folks like us or the churches will be informing our members and asking them to advocate up at the Capitol. And so we're kind of I see us a lot of times to explain in shorthand, we're kind of the social conservatives up at the Capitol. So issues regarding marriage and abortion and life, we work with partners up there as well. Particularly, I'll just illustrate like on the assisted suicide issue because that one's coming up next session.
Okay, that's important
We
to know.
Yeah, right. So we will work with allies up at the legislature, including people on the left who are opposed to assisted suicide. And we will take a look at which legislators may be opposed to it, which bills are going to be presented. We organize testimony, we hold webinars, we've held conferences on assisted suicide. We'll bring in national speakers. I'll add that our website is ctfamily.org, where I blog pretty regularly. And I just added a blog post about assisted suicide, just sharing with people a conference that we held a couple years ago, because I think that we should start boning up again on the issue. So, assisted suicide, abortion, life issues, religious freedom, those are the kind of issues that we're going to organize our members and ask them to go up to the Capitol. And I spend a lot of my time during session identifying bills and looking at the calendar, trying to find out when there's going to be a hearing,
Mhm.
preparing our people, educating people on how to sign up to testify, how long they have to testify, submitting written testimony. We
Mhm.
really have a great process here in Connecticut where anybody can get their 3 minutes up at the Capitol. If
Mm.
you sign up to testify on a bill, and you show up on screen or in person, you're going to get your 3 minutes to testify. And not every state has that. Like New York does not have public
Wow.
hearings.
Wow. You know, I didn't
So
realize
we
that. So that's something good about Connecticut.
yes, we have a lot. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't love Connecticut, right? We want to fight
Absolutely.
for it.
Hmm.
And so I'm from Connecticut. I grew up in Litchfield County. My family's in Waterbury now. And we love this state and want to fight for it. It's worth fighting for. So we have a great system up there. And also, you don't have to sign up in person anymore or even show up in person to testify. You can sign up remotely
Okay.
and then also testify remotely and um, give your testimony that way. And then it becomes part of the public record. And then you can also submit written testimony. I would really encourage people to do that. And in Connecticut, you can even submit it anonymously.
Mm.
So a lot of issues like on the gender issues, there's a lot of
Mhm.
parents in Connecticut who are going through who are having their families destroyed by the gender ideology, right?
Yeah.
And legislators tell me all the time that it's not happening or it's very few parents. I know there's tons of parents out there.
Well,
If
let's make the argument that if it happens to one, that's too many.
Oh, for sure, right?
Um,
Nevertheless, parents are afraid to testify because they might be in a court battle or they
right.
might
Yeah.
be at risk with wrongly or rightly with DCF, or you have
Right.
the authorities at your door. You might only feel comfortable submitting written testimony anonymously. So FIC can help with that, or you can do it yourself. You just check off the anonymous box to submit written testimony.
Okay.
You can do that. They also offer translation services. So a lot of our members are more comfortable speaking Spanish.
Hmm.
So they will testify in Spanish up at the Capitol and they have a translator. So that's what we're doing in session. Out of session, we're organizing with our national allies to learn about new issues, what could
Hmm.
be coming up for the next session, identifying issues and model bills that maybe can be proposed, just learning from each other how to protect our state.
Hmm.
And so I'm working with red states a lot on that too. I have a lot of red state envy, but you know,
Well, they have
we
their problems too. So,
that's true. Uh, but so I'm just getting ideas from them on how best to protect Connecticut families. So it's a great job. I'm an attorney,
mhm.
so a lot of the skills that I learned in law school are very helpful for FIC. I write a lot of administrative memos. I'm writing letters to schools. Doing the legal research. I'll tell you one of the other issues that we're working on right now is Title IX.
Mm.
So with the new administration, they reinstituted the definition under Title IX that it's a sex-based definition
Which
of
was what Title IX was originally. I.
right. It was passed. It's a very short law
Mhm.
to um, protect the female category in sports and education in
Mhm.
schools. So if you receive federal money, you're expected to um, give the same opportunities to girls that you do to boys. And under the Biden administration, they included gender within the definition of sex. So that meant that boys could identify as girls and play in the female category.
So
And
that in the Biden administration, that was basically changed by executive order. Is that accurate?
right, and through letters from the administrative agency,
Mhm.
um,
Was that
dear
specifically
colleague
through the
letters.
Board of Education, or how did that work? Does that something that would, or was that just administered through the Board of Education?
So what happened is the president and his administrative agency will do a dear colleague letter, and they'll signal to states that this is how we're going to interpret Title IX.
Okay.
And from there, our state Department of Education, or sometimes the CABE, Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, will
Mhm.
issue policy guidance for boards of education.
Right.
And
Okay.
then, and lots of times, these are not laws that have been passed. This is just their interpretation of
Okay.
Title IX.
Okay.
And then school boards will also receive advice from their council, usually Shipman and Goodwin, to adopt the policy put forth by the, the state education department or CAPE or their own policy. And that's how that Title IX guidance got down, the new Title IX guidance got down to boots on the ground within the school districts. The boards of ed either adopted a transgender policy that made boys, gave them the ability to play on girls' teams, or they just did it behind the scenes. They're like, oh, that's what we're going to, how we're going to interpret that law.
Mhm.
And so, yes, the boards of education, many of them adopted the CABE policy for transgender students, and that policy largely conflicts now with Title IX. And so, what I've been doing is notifying boards of education that they're in conflict with the federal law, and they are putting themselves in jeopardy of losing federal funding.
Right.
Three school systems, Canton, and I'm trying to think,
Simsbury?
not Simsbury.
Okay.
What is it? Bloomfield and Cromwell
Okay.
received a letter this year in 2025 letting them know that the federal government is going to be expects to do an investigation of their policy regarding transgender students,
Mhm.
and they're including boys and girls sports, locker rooms, changing facilities. It's bad news. So anyways, that should be a sign to other school districts that the federal government needs business. Now I know they've been on hiatus for a month or so, but the Office of Civil Rights for the Federal Department of Education will be coming back online
Mhm.
and renewing their investigation of those three towns. I'll tell you one thing I've been working on for the past couple months is my own daughter, who plays on a volleyball team. Her team was forced to compete against another team with a boy on it. And so
Mhm.
I wrote letters to all the school districts, filed an official Title IX complaint, sent it to the Office of Civil Rights, and we've been looking for other people to file complaints as well. So if you have any viewers from the Naugatuck Valley area, like
Mhm.
Watertown, Waterbury, Seymour, all the way up to Torrington, Prospect, and
Mhm.
you have a daughter who played volleyball, you can help by filing a Title IX complaint, and FIC can help. And we also have guidance on our website. You can even file a complaint anonymously. But
Mhm.
unless more parents get involved, it's going to be hard to get the attention of the Office of Civil Rights because this is happening across the country. So,
But it's
uh,
obviously not just volleyball. So if you have, so can we, if parents have some sport that their daughter has played in, can they, and that where they've been played against a male person who isn't female, they can come and talk to you?
absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to help. It's not a difficult form to file with the federal government. And like I said, it can be done anonymously. I'm very eager to talk to those parents. And I also have, legal counsel lined up if we wanted to pursue things further.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of people reaching out to us and being willing to file that complaint. And I'm happy to talk to people who aren't sure. They're like, this happened, but I'm not sure I want to file a complaint. I'd be happy to talk to them as well.
Mhm.
This student who is playing for Waterbury will also be playing track and field likely in the spring. They played last spring.
Right.
Uh, we're beating girls by full seconds. Okay. Coming in first place, the second place girl came a full 3 seconds behind that athlete.
And that's a lot for those who are not specifically athletic. That is a very large margin when you're running.
Absolutely.
Can
Yeah.
you, just for anyone who's not particularly familiar with this issue, can you talk about the specific differences between male and female athletes and why why this is an actual issue? Because there are still people out there who don't understand that why this is an issue. Oh, it's the same, it's like the transgender. People don't understand why it's an issue. I understand why it's an issue because I've been athletic my whole life, not specifically on a team, but I have been doing, physical activities. And I understand the difference between men and women in a very close and personal way, and not just because I'm married. But if you could explain some of that a little bit, I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, of course. Well, there's studies out there just demonstrating the scientific facts between men and women. It has to do with the the fibers, the muscle fibers, the lung capacity, the size of their hearts, the differences between the two sexes. But I have to say, Selena, that if somebody doesn't get it by now, they are waiting for further proof. And to that end, the um, the international body that sets the standards for the Olympics just did a study,
Mm.
and they just calmly announced, and the New York Times has been reporting on it.
Oh, good.
They've been signaling that they are going to do like cheek swabs at
Mm.
future Olympics to delineate between who's participating as a man and who's participating as a woman, because they did a study and determined that yes, indeed, there are physical differences between men and women that cannot even be eliminated with the use of hormone therapy,
Of course.
even pre-puberty. So they looked at studies where children had their puberty blocked and were administered uh, different sex hormones. Even those people who undertook that transition still have inherent advantages based on their sex. And we're talking about advantages that men have over women. So the science is there and the common sense is there,
Mhm.
but now we have some studies that were acknowledged by the Olympics, and they did not want to do that. Right?
No,
They've
I don't
been
think
letting
they
men
did.
beat up women at the last Olympics. We all watched it with our own eyeballs. And if they've come around and have seen enough evidence to know and understand that they're going to separate the sexes, then in Connecticut, for our students and for the sanity of everybody, we should be able to separate that as well. That's the physical, but I have to say that there are just how disappointing it is for young women to look at the adults in the room and know that they can't muster enough integrity to keep a boy out of their sports. That we're going to do this
Yeah.
pretend dance. And do you know how defeating that is for a young woman to know that the adults in the room can't speak up for them? And even some
Mhm.
people will say, well, those girls should quit the team in order to object. That's not right either. These
No,
are
it
young
isn't.
women who have worked very hard. They have a limited amount of years that they can play on a team and put them in the best situation for college. We shouldn't be asking them to step aside and let a boy win or in protest. It's time for the adults in the room, and I'm looking at you, CIAC. That's the Connecticut Association that sets these rules
Mm.
to have all boys play on the boys' team where they belong. Can I also mention, I just had an op-ed printed in the Republican American to this point that this is not even good for the boys who are playing on the girls' team.
No, no, it's not. It gives them a very false sense of that they're doing well when they're not competing to their own level. It's not right. It isn't right at all. It's as if, it's as if you have a martial arts school and it happens to be all women, which would never happen, by the way. There's reasons why that would never happen. But if you had a guy come in there and he's beating everybody, he's going to think all he can do is win, and he's not actually going to be fit to compete against men, which is who he's supposed to be competing against.
Right?
It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's psychologically damaging. Um, it's also, and you're right, it's giving them a false sense of what's possible,
Yeah.
especially after they leave high school and go
Mhm.
on to quote unquote the real world.
Mhm.
But boys who are administered puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones grow
Oh,
up to be infertile.
oh
Okay.
yeah.
So
That,
they
that's
will
that
lose,
that's the other piece of this conversation, which just kills me.
these are children who are completely incapable of giving that kind of consent. And
Yeah.
I don't care how happy they tell you it makes them,
Mhm.
that's no reason to be sterilizing young boys who maybe don't look or act like other boys.
Mhm.
We've always had young men in our culture who didn't meet society's expectations of what it
Right.
means to look like a man.
Mhm.
And that's okay. They should still be made welcome to
Yeah.
try out for the boys' team and to play on the boys' team and to use the boys' locker. That's where we should be putting our efforts and fighting for, not to put those boys mistakenly on a girls' team, but to encourage them to accept their own bodies. This is like a long term strategy, the only healthy one,
Yes.
to get comfortable with their sex, to play on the boys' sports,
Mhm.
and to treat them as the young men that they are.
Mhm.
I think it's actually quite discriminatory and harmful to encourage them to play on the girls' team. Mentally, physically, long term, it's just damaging to these young men. So all across the board, I feel like we have the best arguments. And so that's part of what we do at Family Institute is to share that news with our members, the
Mhm.
public, the legislators, um, and hope that it changes minds. At least I think on the gender issue, we do see some more opportunities to just at least talk about it in Connecticut. For many years, we couldn't even talk about it, but we've still adopted some pretty bad laws here, and I hope
Now,
that
what
more.
laws specifically are on the books in relationship to that in Connecticut?
Sure. So Connecticut, just a couple years ago,
And this is not just like boys and women's sports, but the thing about any gender transition related laws in Connecticut.
sure. So Connecticut has a state law that prevents discrimination based on gender identity, sex, etc. in schools. That's its own separate law. But then we also have the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, and through the definitions that they use, they define discrimination to include discrimination based on sex, which is defined to include gender and gender identity. And I'm pretty sure that's how that law is structured. So that for businesses and state organizations, quasi state organizations, if you discriminate based on gender, uh, then that person can sue you or bring a complaint to the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, where they can impose fines and
Mm.
even drag you into court. So when the state did that, they made it so that a school system can't fire or discipline somebody based on their gender. So that means, the way they identify it with their gender. So that means that a man presenting as a woman in class, no matter how outrageous their outfit may be,
Mhm.
a school will face discipline with the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities if they were to discipline or fire that individual. So that's where it hits hardest, I think, in Connecticut is in the schools, where you have an inability to protect students from being misled on issues of identity and sex.
Mhm.
Also, this is also for daycares.
Mhm.
Okay, this is any business. You have a daycare that doesn't want to hire somebody who on the weekend wears a shirt that says "kids are sexy." Okay, you can't fire that person because of that shirt without being dragged in front of the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. So
Okay.
that was a very poorly drafted law, and one that FIC fought hard to oppose.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, our legislature, and we can go in this direction too, is very unbalanced. Uh,
You could say that.
so, yeah, in a lot of different ways. But I'm thinking about along party lines. So
Mhm.
when you have one party that is so overwhelmingly in power, it
Mhm.
permits extremists within the party to control the agenda. And when I first started working, so I was an intern up at the state capitol when I was in college.
Wow. Okay.
And when I was there, you'd have Democrats who'd vote against their party, you'd have Republicans who voted against their party. Everybody was just kind of, voting their conscience.
Mhm.
There's and there was a lack of party discipline. It was more individualistic,
That's,
I feel like.
I think that's a good thing. I think that would be a good thing.
Yes, that's what we want, legislators to vote their conscience for sure.
And
But
we like
now,
legislatures that have a conscience.
yeah,
That's good too.
but now I feel like um, there's incredible party discipline and extremism up at the Capitol. So
Mm.
that even if a legislator is on the fence or wants to vote with you, they're afraid to step outside of their party because they're just there's such a high penalty. They're going to be primaried. They're going to be kicked out.
Mm.
So it's like a ruthless hand up there. There's just it's
Mm.
tough. It's very extreme. So I think Connecticut personally would be better served with more party diversity. And that's not even to say like one party is necessarily better than the other. I think both parties are prone to extremism. If you had like overwhelmingly one party up there controlling everything. So I think if we could bring more balance up to the Capitol and more diversity when it came to the parties, we would be better served.
Mm.
And
Well, they do. I mean, the idea of a two-party system is that there's supposed to be checks and balances on each party, and we're supposed to be checking each other. But that's, because I agree. I completely agree that we are absolutely all prone to extremism in our own ways. And the way we stop that is by interacting with other human beings that are different than us. Because that might make you say, oh, maybe I don't want to be rude in that particular way. And it's just like that's like it if you can take a minute and stop and think about what the heck you're doing or what the heck you're even thinking about, then there's a shot that you might say, okay, maybe it would be good to change direction this little tiny bit. Because right now we've got everything kind of going, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a mess up there
it's
in
very
our
extreme. Unfortunately, you know, because one party is so in control up there, I'm finding that there's um, fewer legislators even in the room at the hearings. It's like they're
Oh, wow.
taking a dip. Like they're not there. Of course, in theory they can be watching on the computer, but that's um, less of an ability to actually hear when people are coming in to testify.
Yeah.
And there's just so many bills that get hearings. They'll have like 20 bills set up for one hearing, and it's hard, and the hearings go
How do you
on for
keep
like
track of
12
that?
hours.
Wow.
And there could be only three legislators in the room. You'll usually have the chair, a co-chair, and one other legislator walking around. But it's very discouraging to, go through for people to come in to testify and there's no legislators there to listen. And I feel like that would be less possible if there was more diversity, if we had more of a balance,
Yeah.
more
Well, I
R's
mean,
and
for heaven's
D's.
sakes, our taxes are paying their salary. You'd think they could show up.
That's true. I wish that they would change the rules to at least encourage more in-person activity. That's not to say emergencies don't come up, and we have
Yeah.
some legislators who, emergencies come up, or maybe you
Yeah,
have to care for a family. I'm glad that we have some flexibility so that we can have more parents up there.
but it
And
should be some,
more,
it shouldn't be the standard.
yeah, that's right. There should be more encouraging, I think, of an in-person legislature.
Mhm.
Um, so I do appreciate that we have a part-time legislature, and I hope we keep that for a
Me
long
too.
time.
Me too. You were talking about that it's one of the things that's going to be coming back up is the right to die bills or plural. And I'm going to go with plural because I know that Connecticut usually does two bills. They usually do one for the Senate and one for the House. And so that if one doesn't work, they can see if they can get the other one through. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit because one of the things I've been observing is what's going on in Canada, which is truly terrifying. Um, and for the listeners that don't know, Canada has, and I can't remember what the acronym is, you might actually know this, the MAID protocols.
That's it. That's the
And
acronym. It's
yeah,
called Medical Aid in Dying.
thank you.
Yeah,
And they are, when people are depressed, they are encouraging to make use of these protocols. And it's really over the top. And what's been interesting to me about this is my mother is going to be 95 next month and she is in decline. And if we were in Canada, they would be encouraging her to prematurely depart. And because she has dementia, I don't know, and I'm not in the same state as her typically. And right now, she's in a good situation. She is cared for. She has caregivers that come to the house. And I have a family member who helps cover that because I couldn't afford it. But if she were in a home, I've heard some stories about that they would be very interested to, they are not very careful sometimes about, helping people leave. So I think this is a like a huge moral issue. And what does it mean to be, what does it mean to allow someone to care for you as you're dying? And who's doing that? I mean, there's just so many questions that our culture right now has just made a hash of, partly because we have so much freedom of movement. It's like, oh, I can move anywhere I want. I can move to Florida, far, far away from my parents who might actually need me when I leave, when they're ready to leave. And then we have the fact that there aren't that many of us. There's going to be a lot of people dying without kids, and I'm one of them. So this is pretty personal for me. So,
right, right. So in Canada, you're right. It's gone off the rails. They have a system. They adopted a system that requires doctors to bring up the topic of MAID,
oh, they have to? Oh,
or else they can be censured by their professional organization or something. So there's an incentive for them to bring it up with the patient if they are in decline. And in America, in the places that the law has been adopted, there hasn't been that that hasn't been part of the law, where it's kind of something that you discover on your own if you're like really desirous of it, and then you find your own providers. It's not customary or encouraged for providers to instigate that conversation, though they our opponents on the national level are always trying to insert that into federal law so that
ooh.
there's incentives for doctors to bring it up without it being brought up first by the patient.
Uh,
So that in Canada, that causes a lot more people to think about utilizing it, of course. And I just wrote a story for an article for a website about this issue. And it was an instance where an older mom, was in a nursing home, and her children asked her if she wanted to get MAID. And she's like, no, I'm not really interested in that. And then she fell and she was asked again, and she had to undergo this like thorough investigatory process where the maid people were brought in because the children were like, she wants, I think she's ready. And she was like, no, not really into it. I'm good. I just want to go to another nursing home. And
Mm,
then wouldn't you know, like months later, she was put to sleep. And so there was an investigation, and they discovered that this woman had never asked on her own to be euthanized. Like it was a constant pressure by the staff and her children to
mm,
be euthanized. And so that's where this leads is a lack of autonomy at the end of life. And people feel the pressure like, gee, mom, you're using up a lot of resources, or you're not
mm,
going to leave anything for the kids. And even when people come and testify up at the Capitol, there's a percentage of people who testify about the estate benefits of, you know, dying on your own terms so that you don't use up, you know, your resources and there's less money to leave for the kids. And it's like, for estate planning purposes, this is not the intent. And then, of course, some of our best allies up at the Capitol are people with disabilities who come in and
mhm.
they face quite regularly the situation where they'll be in the hospital or they'll have a doctor who views their life as not worth living. Like, I don't, you know, we've all kind of said before, like, gee, I don't know how that person lives like that, or
Mm.
gee, that seems impossible to me. To hear it from your doctor when you're in a vulnerable situation
Yeah.
is very disheartening, and it can, that grind can really wear at you until you're kind of like, yeah, you know, it only makes sense for me to have assisted
Giving up is
suicide.
shockingly easy.
What's that?
Giving up can be shockingly easy.
Totally. And what my our disability allies say is it's not a matter of if you become disabled, it's really only a matter of when.
Hmm.
Because at the end of our
Accurate.
lives, we're all going to, you know, God willing, we're all going to come to that point where we have to rely on others and
Hmm.
we're vulnerable.
Yep.
And we may not have, like you indicated, you may not have children there to help, and you're going to have the staff. And why should for people who aren't confident or who don't have a lot of resources, the pressure is going to be self-evident that they should utilize this option. And that makes for a more poorer world, right?
Yeah.
The default position shouldn't be, yeah, you're using up resources. The default position should be, we want to help you and care for you until your natural death. And especially in Connecticut, you know, Connecticut was one of the first states, or was the first state to have a hospice organization.
Really? I
Yep.
didn't know that. Very interesting.
Yeah. And so that's really the path forward because when somebody demands that, gee, I can't, you know, I don't want to be in pain or I'm afraid,
Mhm.
um, we have a hospice system that's available to people, which could be improved. And I would say that is a better use of our resources is to encourage our hospice system or for people who want to stay home, um, more access and planning for being cared
In-home
for in your
care,
home.
which is, from what I understand, actually less expensive than institutionalized care. That's, I mean, I've heard something about that. I don't know how accurate that is, but I've heard it from several different places that I can recall.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I heard an ad on the radio the other day for like a state or maybe it was a federal program
Mm.
to pay caregivers in your home, like your relative, instead
Yeah,
of going
yeah, there is
to,
there is a program, and I, because I go back and forth between Connecticut and Maine, I'm aware that both in Connecticut and Maine, a family member can be paid to take care of you. And it is specifically through the state because insurance companies won't do that. If you're paying insurance, they will not pay a family member to take care of you, which is interesting. And because I'm dealing with insurance for my mother. So this is then they're like, nope, we won't do that. But the beauty of it is that if if the state would also do something like, because there is, Medicaid, and most of the care that elder people get that when they don't have money is through Medicaid. If they don't have any resources, then they go into a home that is funded by Medicaid. But it might actually be less expensive for people to come to their homes because if you had something, you know how Medicare is, Medicare sets the prices. Medicaid is doing the same thing. And if you could get some help with having somebody come into your home and care for you, the thing is, I don't go through an agency for my mom because I am negotiating directly with the people who are caring for her. And so she has a great team as a result. I get to pick the people who are coming to work with her, and I get to negotiate with them, and they all get paid different prices because that's what works for them. I have one that is lives right down the road from her, and she gets paid the least, but it's easy for her to get there. So there's this whole like, could we negotiate these things individually? And, wouldn't that be nice? A little
Right.
help is always great. But,
Yeah. Well, if you look at the statistics for assisted suicide, they used to publish them in Oregon and Washington.
mhm,
Most people choose assisted suicide because they don't want to become a burden or out of fear.
mhm,
It's not because they can't access, because of unmanaged pain.
right.
So um, those arguments are just not true. And also, something to be aware of is the ruse that advocates use to try and get a bill passed. So they'll put a bill in that is it comes with the most extreme protections. Like
Mhm.
you got to get double, triple sign off by doctors, and you need three witnesses who aren't
That all
related to
sounds
you.
great.
And
But
it sounds great until, and then they do this in other states, and even some of the advocates here in Connecticut have said this is their plan. They pass a very restrictive bill, and as it turns out, hardly anybody can access it, and so then they have to go in and loosen it up afterwards. But it's like the camel's nose under the tent. Okay, they just want to get it into the law, and Connecticut has a lot of wealthy seniors.
mhm.
This is going to be something like this would be horrible for our senior population when you think about all the pathways to abuse that will
Oh,
go
yeah.
undetected.
Mhm.
And a lot of times these bills require you to lie on the death certificate, saying that it was the underlying disease that killed the person, not assisted suicide. So it requires
The bill requires that?
the past few bills. I think
Huh.
every bill that has been presented in Connecticut includes a provision that requires the underlying disease to be listed as the cause of death.
Wow.
And we've
Okay, that's
actually in the
disturbing.
past had like a state law enforcement organization submit testimony to say this is bad for detecting who
Mhm.
has actually committed murder, because once you give somebody the drugs, there's no follow up to
Mhm.
know who, whether somebody took those drugs themselves or somebody stuffed them down their throat. You
Oh,
don't know.
yeah.
So it really puts a lot of people at risk. Plus, there's no tracking of the drugs. It has happened in other states where those drugs have ended up being taken by people who that they were not intended for. Uh,
Mhm.
and so in fact, even at there's one reported story of a guy who was at uh, this woman's home where she was taking the drugs, and he took a sip. He took a sip to see what it tasted like, and had to go to the hospital too. So it's just totally unnecessary and unregulated. It's really um, has deep roots in people just a society where we don't care about each other, and like we only care about ourselves and our own desires. So we have to be compassionate, and we have to provide alternatives. But this MAID situation in Canada is a perfect example of how everything goes wrong. You even have people who are not don't have longer than 6 months to live, who are not terminal, who are now qualifying for MAID. These are people who have disabilities. Even they want to extend it to people who have mental illness
Mm-hmm.
but are not terminally ill, and children. So
Mm-hmm.
this is where it goes. Once you cross the threshold that the state can get involved and help you kill yourself, there is no limit because there's always the next person who wants to say, well,
Mm-hmm.
why them and not me? Why them and not me? The state has just nothing to stand on to say um, deadly drugs for you, but not for you. It's they eventually through the courts or through more legislation, it will be expanded to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be protecting our families and each other by maintaining the line where the state does not help people kill themselves,
Mm-hmm.
even with doctors, because doctors are the worst people to make a judgment about the value of your life, honestly, because a lot of them are from a different socioeconomic system. They've been to college and graduate school. They have a different view lots of times of the value of somebody's life at the end of life than that person may have. Just natural biases. So we should, and nobody is impervious to that influence. We are all we all have our own biases. We all have come to the situation with our own views. Let's we should not be giving anybody a license to help another person kill themselves. The state should just stay out of that. But we've talked about assisted suicide, and I just want to make sure that we talk about another big issue coming up next session, and that's going to be homeschooling.
Oh,
So,
yes, yes, definitely need to talk about that.
yeah, my husband and I homeschooled for 20 years in Connecticut, and it was great. And one of the great things about it was the freedom that we had to educate our children in the manner we saw fit. And we weren't required to be dragged in front of the school board or an administrator to have to prove to them that our children were being educated. We had the obligation to educate, and we fulfilled that obligation by educating them in the ways that we saw fit. Now, that disturbs a lot of legislators, right? And in fact, a lot of people don't understand that. Like, how could you possibly do that? And there's just tons of help for parents, and parents know their children best. And there are I mean, homeschool kids are, um,
Amazing.
they're amazing and they're incredibly educated and they're just doing so well here in Connecticut. But of course, there are bad apples in any system. But what's particularly annoying about this subject is the um, the cases that they're using to regulate homeschoolers
Are the
are
worst,
not really
like
homeschoolers.
the ones that are the outliers in terms of what's useful. So,
Well,
like
so
the recent one where there was a child was murdered, and they're using that as an example when it actually had nothing to do with anything having to do with homeschooling.
right. Homeschooling is about a child's education. It's not about wellness checks.
Mm,
So, first of all, this child likely was, I think the facts are going to show that they were not being homeschooled when they were killed. Okay, that was something that the family used in an effort to hide the fact that this child had been killed. But just even more practically speaking, um, like the education system cannot be used as a health and welfare check for children. Like, are they going to drag parents who have non-school age children into schools to be checked and verified that they're healthy? First of all, you're just not going to be able to detect that. That's not what school administrators are trained to do. Like, if this family could hide abuse from a DCF agent, I
mm,
mean, they're going to blow a school administrator out of the water.
uh,
Uh, and so you're going to be wasting resources within schools to drag even school age children in to be eyeballed to see if they're doing well. Plus, Connecticut has a very robust mandated reporter system. In Connecticut, we're not homeschooling our kids on the moon. Like, They go to the doctors and they go to the grocery store and they have family members around. And we have large homeschool communities.
Mm,
So it would be very hard to hide. But of course, even for parents in the public school system, if you want to hide, there is nothing the state can do, much that the state can do about it. Like that person's going to hide. And to me, it's better to focus our scarce resources on the people who want to use the public school system and support mandated reporters when they do make a report. I think the cases that the legislators are using to highlight um, the need for regulating homeschool um, are just don't fit the fact pattern of homeschooling. But also, they were not off the radar entirely. The the authorities were aware of these families and
mm,
that there was a problem, and then they fell through the cracks. We'd be
mm,
better off dedicating resources to helping the agencies that are actually aware of the problems
mm,
and to supporting those families to protect those children. Not creating an entirely new regulatory system to screen all families
mm,
uh, who aren't going to be caught, the bad ones aren't going to be caught anyways.
mm,
It's only through our mandated reporter system and the agencies that are tasked to protecting families and children that we're going to effectively help similar situations. An excuse, I think, to try and regulate homeschoolers because honestly, they're probably, you know, a large government just wants more control, right?
mm,
So when you are a school administrator or you're in the Department of Education and you're aware of children who are not in the system, you just become alarmed and you just maybe like a mother hen, like you just want to make sure everybody's tracked and they're all
mm,
receiving an excellent education or the education that you want them to receive. But we need to be able to trust parents and or continue to trust parents because there is a trusting system right now and let parents continue to give their children the education that they know that's best and that whether that's homeschooling or private school or public school um, leave the power with the parents and don't um, force them to march in and use up resources that will just be wasted anyways.
mm,
That's how I feel about it. And one of the great things about working with homeschoolers is they're very active, they're very responsive.
mm.
Um, and I used to joke when I was a homeschooler, and people, of course, I homeschooled from like a Christian perspective, and we studied Latin and all kinds of fun stuff.
Nice.
But my kids rubbed elbows with kids from every diverse background. So for every type of person, there's like a subgroup of homeschoolers.
Mm,
So if you have like secular, liberal, maybe you're into LGBTQ plus, like for every subgroup, there's another subgroup of
Schoolers.
homeschoolers, and they all come up to the Capitol, and it's just like the most diverse and beautiful group of people advocating for their rights up at the Capitol that you'd ever want to see. I don't know if you were up at the Capitol when they had over
Oh, I think I was in Maine that week, but
yeah, it was thousands and thousands of people up at in the atrium of the legislature, and they made a huge impression. And they're very active and articulate, and just amazing people. So I think that if the legislature uh, is going to push a bill, that they're going to have a few big rallies on their hands and a lot of angry people.
mhm.
Because if you think about all the people who homeschool, and then they have their relatives and their friends, and who are going to be dismayed when they find out that their ability to homeschool in Connecticut has been
Mhm.
affected.
Now those numbers grew a lot during COVID, didn't they?
They did tremendously. Now, I think that they peaked and they are actually moderating and coming down a bit.
Okay.
So, and that's because we've got a flexible system. Like people, my kids didn't even realize that, COVID was happening. Like they were aware, but it didn't affect their lives
Right.
because we were homeschooling. And um, I'm an I'm a natural introvert, so I loved everything getting canceled. Like
I know, me
it was
too.
great. Uh,
Plenty of time to write. It was just like, oh,
oh,
except I thought
but
it was going to be 2 whole weeks to write. It ended up being a lot longer than that.
it was so satisfying to go to your calendar and cross off another item. Like that felt so good. Uh,
Hmm.
but you got to leave that flexibility with the parents and let them manage their children and their households as they see fit. I have to say, a lot of these kids who are homeschooled are traumatized. Like I homeschooled my kids in part because, hate to throw around the word trauma, but it can be traumatic going through public school if you're picked on or if you can't manage social skills. So a lot of parents, or even like kids who have maybe a learning disability, they can experience a lot of trauma at school. And so they're homeschooled and they do great. And the parents find support. But to force them to go back to that school for another administrative meeting with an administrator who doesn't know you and is going to re-traumatize a lot of these children
Hmm.
unnecessarily. This is the most backward and dumb way to try and protect vulnerable children. Instead, they should be focusing on the bad actors that they know, relying on the mandated reporter system, and focusing like a laser on children who are actually being abused and not using new laws to screen all parents
Hmm.
and get in our business. So I hope, and I just know that the homeschoolers are watching this issue very closely. We'll
Hmm.
be working with our members
Hmm.
and definitely supporting them as they advocate up at the Capitol.
Is there an organization in Connecticut specifically for homeschoolers?
Yeah, there's a few. So there's Connecticut Homeschool Network.
Okay.
They're a large secular organization for any homeschooler in Connecticut. Wonderful. They give terrific advice.
Hmm.
There's also a legal advocacy organization that's based in Connecticut. That's NHELD, NHELD.
Hmm.
And then there's Teach, TEACH, and that's the Christian Homeschooler Association. Each organization has put on some terrific programs over the summer, inviting legislators. We have some terrific legislators who are active on this issue. But I think if I had any advice for anyone out there who does want to protect our ability to educate our children here in Connecticut the way we see fit through homeschooling, is to just make sure their legislator knows who they are in the
Hmm.
time that we have left before the next session. When
Hmm.
you bump into them, and I heard a legislator say this the other day, that when you bump into them at the supermarket, they should be like, oh, there's that woman again. Like, not in a bad way,
Right.
but oh, there's Leslie Wolfgang. That's great. How are you
Some
doing
of them, some of them have
Thanksgiving?
coffee. Mine has coffees. Go sit and
Please.
have coffee with them.
Yes, you don't want to be your first experience with complaining about something.
Right.
Have coffee.
That's fair. That's
Yeah, get to know them. And that's better. That's as good as any rally. That's as good as testifying up at the Capitol. All
it's
those things
personal.
need to be done,
Mm,
but the one-on-one contact really can't be beat.
yeah. Thank you for that because I've been putting that piece off and I need to do it myself. So that would be a very good thing to do. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Especially during the holidays, it's a little lighter. People are more friendly, if there's any opportunity to go talk to your legislator
and
during the
even if you're
holidays.
mad at them, as I'm mad at mine, it's try and let that go, maybe because of the holiday, but and see the person in front of you. And
Yeah,
I'm saying
well,
this to myself because I
yeah,
know.
for sure. Well, you know what? I honestly, and I feel this deeply, I do appreciate a legislator putting in the work. And even though they're paid, like it is a ton of work to be a legislator.
There's a
Just
learning curve, man.
Yeah, and the commitment and the running for office. But I don't want to discourage anybody from running for office either. We
No,
need a lot of
please
people
run
to
for
run for
office.
office.
Yeah.
But when you're up there and you see them having to be up at the Capitol and voting and the long hours. So honestly, when I meet a legislator, I'm just genuinely thankful and I'll usually express it, thank them for their service. And I think that's a great baseline because
Yeah.
it really
Okay.
is a civic virtue
Mhm.
and a service to the community to participate in government that way. So that's, think of that as a baseline. And then honestly, you can usually find things, shared values,
Mhm.
and then go from there. And of course, we always want to be respectful and just try to present your viewpoint as clearly and succinctly as possible in a charitable way. And that's one of the great things about Connecticut. I do like the temperament of most people. Like, I do find that they are sensible and reasonable and want to present and be articulate and be kind to one another.
Mhm.
I think that social conservatives and people on the right are given a bad rap here in Connecticut,
Mhm.
but it's just totally not deserved, because once you get to know somebody or just calmly talk to them, we're actually very nice. Although my son-in-law and daughter live in Albuquerque, and I really tried really hard to get my son-in-law to move to Connecticut. And so they'd come to visit a few times, and he'd be like, gee, Mom, I don't know. When I see people in their cars, they just don't look like they're smiling or having a good time. I'm like, all right, you
Oh.
got me there. That's just not going to happen.
We're a
Uh,
little too close to New York for that, I think. I'll be happy to blame New York for that. Yeah, it is interesting. The energy changes as you go. Well, it's a little different in Maine now, which is actually where I am right now. But it was like as you got closer to New York, the more abrupt people were likely to be with you. Because I used to walk down the street in Brunswick and stop and have a random conversation with somebody. And there was there was space and time to do that. And certainly Connecticut is better than that, better at that than New York is. But I think, the energy changes the closer you get to the bigger cities. Um,
yeah, yeah, I can
just as
see that.
cultural observation.
Yeah. Do you think things changed after COVID? Like people became
Um,
more walled
yeah,
off?
well, some of that, yeah, because definitely Maine definitely has an aging population. And people were really scared of COVID up here, depending on where you are, especially on the coast.
Hmm.
And we have a very large medical complex here. That is, we have that in Connecticut too. And so that I think contributed to people's fear that it's like, oh my God, the masking and everything. And like I said, you have an older population that's very reliant on physicians. And if the physician is saying you should be scared of this, they're going to be scared of it. And then there were a lot of people who I have a friend, my teacher here up in Maine he's also a real estate agent, and people were buying property up here without even looking at it because they were so because they wanted to get out of New York. And some of them were from Connecticut. There were a lot of people from New York who bought property up in Maine and are now very sad about that because they bought something that was not worth what they paid for it for all sorts of different reasons. So,
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Maine has got a great uh, association working to protect girls' rights. They've been
ah,
holding rallies,
okay.
and because they have a real problem up there with boys playing in girls' sports. So I really admire the grassroots efforts that they're making right now against
That's
boys and girls sports to protect girls sports. So if you
that's good
see
to
any
hear.
flyers up there, grab one for me because I want to see what they're up to.
Yeah.
But very strong.
So are we there? Is there more that you'd like to add?
I have nothing else. I mean, oh yes, okay. So listen, people should visit our website at ctfamily.org. We have a couple of events coming up. So
Mhm.
I'll mention so if people send me an email at ppdirector.org,
Mhm.
I'm hosting on my own a meeting on December 1st. And I think you're aware of this
I am.
on Zoom for anybody who wants to put boots on the ground in next year's election to help diversify the legislature. And I feel like a lot of times people are working independently, and to the extent that we can select a few races and help out. I want us to work together. So that's coming up on December 1st. People are welcome to contact me either on Facebook or on X and send me a message. I'm happy to connect them to the December 1st meeting, which is coming up soon. But then
And if
also,
you want, if you can send me links and I'll put them in the show notes. Send me links to your articles. I'd be happy to put those up. And you know, any other links you think would be beneficial, I will put those in the show notes for everybody.
good. Well, on December 11th, we're going to be hosting a webinar, well, like a Zoom meeting
Mhm.
on the gen on called Wonderfully Made, and it's going to be biblical perspective on gender. So we're going
Okay.
to have experts from Connecticut talking about the gender issue and really giving parents and anybody on the Zoom an opportunity to ask questions and to learn from each other. I feel like we don't have enough outlets here in Connecticut where people can just speak honestly and ask genuine questions like what is going on in the schools, what is happening at my in my church, how can we talk about this? And so December 11th, there's a link to register for that. I do have a couple conference links up there. And then also people should save the date. March 18th in 2026 will be the March for Life.
Okay.
So people
All
should
right.
look forward to that too.
Fantastic.
Good.
Leslie, it's been great having you on. I've
Yeah,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
this. I've
Yeah,
really enjoyed this. So I hope you'll come back.
I will. You can
Wonderful.
get Peter on here too.
That would be great. That would be great. I know Jason's been up to, he's got some other projects he's working on, and yeah, we'll be seeing some interesting stuff from him. If you check the Connecticut CT Common Sense YouTube channel, he's been putting up a bunch of different things that he's been wanting to work on for a while. So he's been leaving this a little bit more to me. He's still on Thursdays. But of course, this Thursday is Thanksgiving, so we will not be having a podcast. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving full of
Thank
family
you.
and really awesome food.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for what you do, Selena. I really appreciate the effort that you guys put into the podcast, desperately needed for Connecticut. And
Hopefully, more people will start doing this sort of thing because we have so many people doing such great work in Connecticut and we never hear about it. And that's why we want to have it. So,
that's that's true. That's true. Thank you. Good. Well, we'll be in touch.
all right, great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.